Imperialism refers to the policy or practice of extending power over foreign nations, usually by force. It involves the exercise of political, economic, and military power to establish control over other lands and peoples, often with the aim of extracting resources and wealth for the benefit of the imperial power. Imperialism is often associated with the ancient Greek and Roman Empire, and more popularly with the expansion of European powers to Africa, the Americas, and Asia from the 15th to the mid-18th centuries, and with the empire building of Germany, Italy, and Japan, among others, during the 19th and 20th centuries. One of the key features of imperialism is the use or threat of military force to establish control over other peoples and territories. This often involves the conquest and annexation of foreign lands, as well as the imposition of new political and social systems that reflect the interests and values of the imperial power. Examples of this are the British colonization of India and Africa, and the Spanish colonization of the Americas. In addition to military conquest, imperialism also often involves the use of economic and cultural power to establish influence and control over other nations. This can take the form of economic exploitation, such as the British Empire's extraction of resources and labor from India, and the US's imposition of cultural values and practices, such as education, religion, and language in the Philippines. Imperialism has been justified in different ways throughout history, often with appeals to notions of superiority, progress, and civilization. The Roman Empire, for example, justified its conquests in terms of bringing peace, stability, and civilization to the peoples it conquered. While European powers in the 19th century often justified their imperial projects as a means of civilizing their colonies, while also promoting European-style governance and institutions. Critics of imperialism, however, have pointed out that these justifications often mask the underlying economic and political motives of imperial powers. They argue that imperialism is fundamentally exploitative and oppressive, and that it serves the interests of the ruling elite rather than the people being colonized.
What is left for the Sultan? Ottoman delegate Sadullah Pasha whispered, his fingers tightening around the papers before him. He had come to Berlin not to negotiate, but to witness the carving of an empire. Across the room, the great powers debated the fate of lands that had belonged to the Ottomans for centuries. Bulgaria, Bosnia, Serbia, Montenegro, Romania. The Treaty of San Stefano had already torn them away, and now in Berlin, the European powers were dissecting the Balkans like surgeons with dull knives. Britain and Austria Hungary had made their intentions clear. Bosnia and Herzegovina would be administered by Vienna. No official annexation, just a polite fiction, but to the Ottomans it made no difference. The Sultan's grasp on the Balkans was slipping away. Sadullah Pasha's gaze drifted toward Benjamin Disraeli, the British Prime Minister, who sat with his usual composure. He had struck a bargain with the Ottomans before the Congress even began. In exchange for supporting Ottoman rule in Anatolia, Britain would take Cyprus. There had been no negotiation. There had been no choice. From the head of the table, Bismarck's voice rang out, "Turkey in Europe is a thing of the past." Sadullah Pasha closed his eyes. The sick man of Europe was now a man without a cure. At a high point of its more than 600 years long history, in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Ottoman Empire was a global power. It stretched across Southeast Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia. It had a strong centralized government and a formidable military. By the late 19th century, however, it had become a shadow of its former self. The once dominant military was outdated and repeatedly defeated by European powers. Its economy was weakened by debt and reliance on foreign loans, and nationalist uprisings had chipped away at its territorial holdings. Many of its provinces sought independence or autonomy. The empire was home to a diverse mix of ethnic and religious groups. These groups were often marginalized under Ottoman rule and inspired by the growing influence of nationalism sweeping across Europe. In 1817, following the Second Serbian Uprising, Serbia gained autonomy. In the 1820s, the Greek War of Independence resulted in the loss of Greece as an Ottoman territory. In 1876, Bulgarian nationalists launched an uprising against Ottoman rule. The revolt was suppressed with brutal force, leading to international condemnation. That's when Russia saw an opportunity to expand its influence. By the mid-19th century, Pan-Slavism had evolved from a cultural movement into a political force, with Russia positioning itself as the protector of Slavs, especially Orthodox Christians in the Balkans. The Bulgarian uprising and the Ottoman response intensified Slavic nationalist sentiments and gave Russia a reason to intervene militarily. It declared war on the Ottoman Empire in 1877. By early 1878, Russian troops reached the outskirts of Constantinople, forcing the Ottomans to sue for peace. The war ended with the Treaty of San Stefano, which granted independence or autonomy to Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro and Romania. It gave Russia significant territorial gains and created a large, independent Bulgaria. This alarmed other European powers, particularly Britain and Austria Hungary, who feared Russian dominance in the Balkans and a threat to the balance of power in Europe. A large Bulgaria under Russian influence would give Russia direct access to the Mediterranean, challenging British and Austrian interests. Britain, in particular, feared Russia's expansion toward its own trade routes, including control over the Suez Canal. The Ottomans had already lost significant territory, and a strong Bulgaria would weaken them further, accelerating their decline. The European powers, while critical of Ottoman rule, still saw the empire as a necessary buffer against Russian expansion. Austria Hungary worried that a powerful Slavic state in the Balkans would inspire Slavic subjects within its own empire, leading to internal unrest. Serbia, also a Slavic state, would be emboldened by a strong Bulgaria. The other European powers opposed any single power, whether Russia or the Ottomans, gaining too much influence in the region. The large Bulgaria created by the Treaty of San Stefano upset this balance, making intervention necessary. Besides that, growing nationalist movements in the Balkans were destabilizing the region. The Congress aimed to balance the aspirations of Balkan nations with the interests of European powers, preventing further conflict. Serbia and Bulgaria, for example, both wanted to control Macedonia, leading to future conflicts. Austria Hungary and Russia competed for influence, with Austria fearing that Slavic nationalism would spread unrest in its own empire. These tensions made the Balkans highly unstable, setting the stage for future wars, including the Balkan Wars and eventually World War I. The Congress was an attempt to mediate and avoid direct confrontation. Each major power sought to protect its own strategic interests. Britain wanted to safeguard access to trade routes and prevent Russian access to the Mediterranean. Austria-Hungary wanted to extend its influence in the Balkans, while Russia sought to maintain its gains from the war. The Congress was presided over by Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany. As the host and mediator, Bismarck sought to maintain a balance of power in Europe by preventing any single nation from gaining too much control in the Balkans. His role was largely that of a neutral arbitrator, aiming to prevent conflict among the great powers while preserving stability in the region. Congress ended with a Treaty of Berlin. It divided Bulgaria into three parts: a much smaller Principality of Bulgaria, nominally under Ottoman rule but de facto independent; Eastern Rumelia, still controlled by the Ottomans but with administrative autonomy; and Macedonia, fully returned to Ottoman rule. Serbia, Montenegro and Romania, which had fought alongside Russia in the war, were granted full independence from the Ottoman Empire. Serbia and Montenegro were denied territorial expansion into Bosnia due to Austria-Hungary's own ambitions in the region. Although Bosnia and Herzegovina remained officially under Ottoman sovereignty, Austria-Hungary was granted the right to administer it. This was a compromise to prevent Austria from feeling threatened by Serbian expansion and Russian influence. Britain, in exchange for supporting the Ottomans, gained control of Cyprus, strengthening its position in the eastern Mediterranean and securing routes to India. This move was seen as a direct counter to Russian ambitions in the region. Russia retained some territorial gains, particularly in Bessarabia and the Caucasus, but its influence in the Balkans was significantly reduced compared to what the Treaty of San Stefano had promised. The Balkan states were left dissatisfied, especially Bulgaria, which saw its territory drastically reduced, and the Ottoman Empire remained weak, losing significant European territory, but was temporarily preserved to maintain the balance of power. Russia felt humiliated, blaming Germany for not supporting its territorial ambitions, which damaged Russo-German relations. It had historically seen Germany as a friendly power due to their alliance in the League of the Three Emperors, which included Russia, Germany, and Austria Hungary. Russia expected Bismarck to support its territorial ambitions, especially in Bulgaria, given their past cooperation. They viewed Austria Hungary as their rival in the Balkans. Russian officials saw the Congress as a diplomatic defeat, and nationalist sentiment in Russia turned against Germany. This resentment contributed to Russia withdrawing from the League of the Three Emperors and seeking closer ties with France, leading to the formation of the Franco-Russian alliance in 1894. This realignment played a major role in shaping the alliances that would later lead to World War I. Serbian nationalists grew resentful over Austria-Hungary's control of Bosnia. Although the region technically remained part of the Ottoman Empire, Austria-Hungary was given administrative control, effectively making it a protectorate. This move blocked Serbia's hopes of expanding westward and uniting South Slavs under its leadership. For Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina were not just strategically important, but also culturally and historically significant. The provinces had large Serbian Orthodox populations, and many Serbs viewed them as rightfully Serbian territory.
I got clouds up right by my bell. I fuck on this hoe, then wish her well. Run around, send your ass to hell. And I'm beat up, bitch like